Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm Nathan Shields, and today I've got a new acquaintance, Matthew Jurek. Matthew, do you go by Matt or Matthew?
And when I'm in trouble, it's Matthew.
Oh,
So we'll
okay.
keep it Matt.
Uh,
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
call
keep
you
it Matt
Matt.
here.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt Jurek, he's PT and is the business owner of Osprey RTM Solutions and Consulting. And he's joining me today because of, there's been some information going around about RTMs. I recently did an episode with a wearable technology regarding RTMs because this is all relatively new. And I was excited to bring you on because you've really been focused on helping and consulting both on the software side and on the implementation side, helping owners implement these RTM codes into their practice to their benefit and to the patients of the benefit as well. So I'm really excited to bring you on. So number one, thanks for coming on, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This is fun for me. Thanks a lot, Nathan.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what got you into this space to begin with. You are a physical therapist, but you had a kind of a winding journey to get to this point.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been an interesting road. So I graduated from PT school in '08, began right away in the outpatient clinic, got married to a way better PT than I. She's also way better looking too, but she's mine, guys. Anyhow, so we started our journey together, and Indiana in the Midwest, love the people, love our people there, but we needed adventure. We needed to get out and see what was out there, and we thought Oregon sounded cool. So our honeymoon was actually a trip out there. We began our careers out there, had our kids, two lovely kids, and at one point, we just kind of came to the recognition of, man, we're working too hard and running to feed the kids in the morning, drop them off at daycare, coming back, doing a little bit with them, eating dinner, and then putting them to sleep and doing it the next day. And we wanted to do life differently. So we sold everything. Beautiful home. I'll never forget that home, but we sold it and got a huge fifth wheel and started traveling the country as travel PTs. So we found it workable where one of us could work a 3-month contract, the other one was homeschooling our
Wow.
kids and loving on them. And then we traveled for about 6 weeks, seeing some really cool stuff, and then we'd flip flop. So neither one of us got burnt out with the hectic kid life and keeping up with that, which is its own burden at times. And then, work life. Nobody's getting burnt out there. So we were flipping back and forth. Made it through the pandemic, which was an interesting thing, but life seemed to be keeping us on the road. So we've been doing it now for 3 years, and we wanted to see some friends that we made out in Southern Oregon. So while we were there, I ended up asking and approaching the owner of the clinic that I worked with at that time if he'd have me. And before I could get the words out, he said yes. So I settled down for a nice 3-month contract with him. And while there, I said, "How can I help you when I'm on the road, man? I'm looking for more freedom. I know it sounds selfish to say with the lifestyle we're living, but where can I help you? Like telehealth program? What?" And he goes, "Stop right there. I got 3 letters for you. It says RTM. You know anything about it?" "No, I don't." He said, "Find out about it. Figure it out. If you can establish a program, we're going to work something out together because it's not anything that I have the bandwidth. It's something that's out there. I don't know what it is. Figure it out for me, and we'll split some differences here." And so that gave me the motivation, right, to kind of really dig in and find out what are these three letters. What do they mean? What are the codes
Mhm.
that are associated with them?
Right.
How the heck do I get it done? And so I just up and ran it and started running a program for him after finding some ways through some stumbling blocks.
Yeah. And so you've been working on this independently, just developing a program for him, but now you're also consulting with other owners?
Yeah. So in the midst of that, I'd talk to anybody that was in the game, owners
Right.
themselves. Right. We had a couple different platforms that we already had subscriptions to that were saying we could do RTM through their platform, right?
Okay.
So we can take it this route. So I was talking to the leaders of both those groups and saying, okay, what makes sense for our culture at the company that I was working with, and how can I get there? And what I kept on finding was that the software companies had a big difficulty, a big gap. They had this nice, tidy package to sell owners, but they had no way of providing a solution for those owners to implement it. weren't able to really speak that PT language, that on the ground, front line kind of language of doing it in your clinic. So I found that was a gap. And then the PT owners, man, they're running ragged without, time is a 4-letter word to them.
Yeah.
They just don't have it. It's not showing up. So
They have no clue where to start.
no clue where to start, right? So then I was like, well, I could take what I've done and develop it into some kind of package that allows folks, whatever kind of size of easy button they want to press, let's try to develop these different packages, these different levels to start with, and gaining some traction. It's been a fun venture so far. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to back up because we've already used
Yeah.
a 3-letter acronym and haven't even explained what it is. You may have listened to the previous episode, but if you're new to RTMs, we have to back way up. So imagine I'm an owner and I'm calling you and I say, hey, I've heard about these RTMs. What are they? What do I need to know about them? And appropriate candidate for implementing them. How do you get them really fundamentally up to speed?
Yeah. It's fun to see who knows, who thinks they know, who doesn't have a clue and admits to it. But RTM, so remote therapeutic monitoring, right? CMS at the beginning of the year, and here we are at the end of 22. So it's been a whole year since they wrote these rules
Right.
with 2 or 3 sentences and said, hey, clinic owners, go ahead and figure this out, right? And so there you go. So then all the consulting or legal businesses want to jump on it. It sounds awesome because, okay, there's this new source of revenue for owners and stuff. And there's still this gap of not a really good explanation or implementation of it. So RTM, remote therapeutic monitoring, CMS released those in an effort to mirror what was already in existence with RPM, so remote physiological monitoring. So you've got your cardiac specialist who has an expensive device that he's able to supply his cardiac patient with. And he spends time training that patient on it, the cost of the device itself, and then interpreting the data afterwards. So RPM codes were in existence to allow that clinician to capture some of that cost back, right? So then I think what occurred was coinciding with the pandemic and a split or less in-person clinic visits had to happen for PTs for some while. And in so doing, I believe that data was tracked, and CMS found that patients were reporting actually better functional outcomes when they had that trackable, accountable component to their care. They had the contact in between clinic visits. So CMS said, well, we can take this and make it happen in the therapy world. So they wrote 4 codes that kind of mirrored what were in there. And it boiled down to CMS wanting the codes to track 1, accountability of a patient, and 2, musculoskeletal data to kind of monitor progressions and interject in a timely fashion if something was going wrong with their care between clinic visits, basically. And then just improve that out of clinic communication, quick modification of the behavior. So out came these 4 codes, right? So you got 98975. That is one code that can be billed 1 time per patient care, per episode of care.
Okay.
And it signifies the training of the patient on this device that you're supplying them.
It's almost like a one-time initial eval code per episode, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's being used in such. There's some gray area in terms of when to bill it, because you'll see the further ruling with the 77 code. But yeah, it's basically, okay, I took my time, I trained this person on this device. And mind you, I should back up. Within the device description, CMS included a software that is capable of tracking musculoskeletal data, right? So that's where you see these apps being released that are able to track some form of musculoskeletal data.
So it doesn't have to be a wearable like we had last time. It can just be someone going onto an app that you've instructed them on and saying, I did XYZ exercises, or I did my home exercise program for so many minutes today. It can be something as simple as that.
There is a certification that Medicare is encouraging that they'll provide the software company to apply for and be certified underneath. The rules and how that is occurring has, I think cluster is a light word on that a little bit. It hasn't gone very well. So what I was able to do is play with a couple of these different platforms and see what Medicare was reimbursing. So all I can do is say from my end, yes, I've used an app that is tracking login times, active participation, perceived exertion, pain, those kind of quantitative data. And Medicare at this juncture is reimbursing for that usage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that code is which one again? The first one?
So 98975 is I trained them on that software that was provided. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So then comes 98977, and that's reimbursement for the actual device that you provided.
Okay.
This code is interesting because it's kind of on a daily clock. Once the person is engaged with that app or that software, the clock begins, and a 30-day time limit has been set by CMS in which the patient needs to have 16 interactions with this software. So some kind of data points 16 times. It's a number that's been, PT owners will read that number and they'll stop and they'll just put it away. I don't have time to figure out how am I going to engage a patient that many times online, and what do I do with that 16? And honestly, it was a big pill for me to swallow too, because I was like, is this the end of me working this deal out with this company? You know, in the end, what's a patient coming to PT for? They want to get better. They want to improve their function. The PT's main weapon to combat that, main medicine, is exercise, right? So we've been doing this all along. We've said, here's your homework, piece of paper, your Bible for the next couple weeks while you're working with me, and I want you to stay active with it. However, I feel as a PT, we're not very proactive in saying, like, this is the prescription. If your doctor told you to take your pill twice a day for the next 30 days, you're going to do that. Like, I'm asking you, this is the prescription.
I'm the doctor.
So this gives,
listen to me.
yeah, this is right. This, did you do your exercise? No, I didn't. I lost my papers, or now I've got too many papers. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I'm like, whoa, this is a great excuse, if I needed an excuse, to say, hey, look, you got to sign in, you got to do your homework, and it's all in one place. It's not losable. You know, it's all there. So I really agree with CMS's decisions to make this a reality for PTs, honestly, and something that's going to be reimbursed now, because I don't know how much time is spent running to the printer, reprinting this, reformulating that, and, you know, in the clinic, and it's like, no, Mrs. Jones, like, you're supposed to do this. I'm sorry. So, so that 77 code is recapturing that cost and tracking that patient, proving that 16 out of those 30 days have been met.
So if that's the qualifier, you would bill this code at the end of that 30 days if the 16 interactions had been met.
Right. Many of the apps are very clever. They've done it in different ways, but they'll flag or they'll signify when that person has reached that threshold so that you know it's appropriate to bill them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to go back and manually count each visit 16 times. They'll just tell you they've met it or they haven't. I got you.
I tried that about 3 times, and then I was like, hey, where's the solution here?
Just flag me, dude.
Yeah, just flag me. Go ahead and flag me. So then the other cool thing about that code is it lasts another 30. Well, every 30 days, if those 16 points, you can hit that. Right. That's that code. And those two are untimed codes as well. So in my model where I'm working for a clinic remotely and tracking these things, I do it differently than a clinic who each PT is taking the responsibility and has been trained to take this responsibility. But those two codes can just be tagged on the end of a daily note as untimed codes. So that's how those are kind of going through. So now it gets tricky. You ready?
I thought we were already through the tricky part.
Yeah, sorry.
16 in 30 days. I thought that was the tricky part, but there's more.
Yeah, I know. All right. So we got 98980. Now this one is more of in the timed code category. And what it's capturing is The PT's time spent tracking and monitoring the data that's brought in.
Okay.
It is messaging, email messaging, text messaging, whatever platform you're using, a chat through the software that of your choice kind of thing. And then at least one phone or video call, all of which is up 20 minutes.
Okay.
Did you catch all that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So all that full 20-minute time is now billable under 98980. That gets daunting as well, but then I like to remind owners, how frequently are you getting a call from Mrs. Jones outside of her clinic visits to say, what was that exercise? Or my knee is really swollen. And so you're stepping away and you're answering those calls anyhow. So again, if you did it right, this is something that you're kind of already doing. And now there's a way to get reimbursed for it. Yeah.
Just an intricacy about that is, can that be billed in between visits when she makes that call, or do you have to wait until the time of service to bill that code?
Sure. The answer to that is yes. My model, having made those contact points, talk to those patients, and then fully track that 20 minutes I feel comfortable billing. I don't always bill it on the day that I've talked to Mrs. Jones.
Okay.
If it makes sense to kind of wrap the codes together, I've done that before, and that's not been argued against.
You just have to document appropriately. I spent 5 minutes here on this day. I spent 10 minutes on a call. If it was like the first 5 minutes of your conversation at the time of service, maybe it goes under that code if it pays well enough. I don't know.
Yes, okay. That's right. It can be anywhere in there. If that time outside of the clinic has been spent regarding the case, if it's 5 minutes.
Oh, that doesn't meet the 8-minute rule, right? It still has to meet 8 minutes.
It has to meet the 20 minutes combined time. If you can,
so you can only do it every 20 minutes. Even if it hits 8 minutes, you still can't bill that code.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So it's a 20-minute must. All right, I understand.
That's correct. So, for example, like in some of my documentation, I'll write, Mrs. Jones has been active since X date and has had 6 email messages. Because I have automated at-a-girl messages that go out, and I'll get responses to those.
Okay.
So six messages totaling 8 minutes of time, plus 5 minutes of time tracking her data and helping modifying her home exercise. And then on this date, I spent another 10 minutes helping Mrs. Jones through navigating her home environment and dealing with swelling after her new knee.
Does that include, like, at this point, if she's having a hard time still logging in and finding things and that kind of stuff on the app, does that count?
I feel comfortable doing that because it's my time as a professional. I mean, honestly, Medicare's asking me to spend my time. I'll always interject something in there about how are you doing with this stretch, or are you making it around the house okay, kind of thing, so that there's that level of care advice kind of given within the call. Yeah.
I think it's a good point to remind everybody, listen, this is Matt Jurek's consultation to the group that's listening. As it pertains to December 2022, things could significantly change if you're listening to this in 2026. So don't rely on this information. Even if this is 2022 or early 2023 that you're listening, things could change. And so you got to be on top of the RTM codes. But what I really love is that you're sharing the specific codes that we're talking about. So it should be easier to come up to speed on what they are. And then it's also easier to then find these codes on what CMS has put out, APTA has put out. Talk to your Rick Gowendas and BCMSs and that kind of stuff regarding the codes. But let's just be clear that you don't take any responsibility for the advice that you're sharing today.
No, sir. That's a well said disclaimer there. I appreciate that. Yeah, my job is, as I see it, is to interpret things. It's my interpretation, and then share what's worked for me. And then we'll modify around what's going to work in your space. So, yeah, I appreciate that. This isn't the final say. I'm not that guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the 97980. Any
Correct.
More nuances to that one?
No, there's one additional code. They said we're going to put in another code, 98981. That is if you've repeated in the same calendar month the 98980 requirements of the
Okay.
20 minutes of time spent, you can bill another code. So yeah, the 80 and the 81 are on calendar month clocks. So that is a nuance I should have shared. They are on a calendar month. The 77 is on a 30-day timer that begins at
Oh,
eval. Yeah.
okay. So there's a distinction there. The 80 code, if you'd had this 20 minutes at the 29th of the month, it resets as of the first of the next month.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
How
that's as
weird is
far as
that?
we can tell. It's odd. I know.
Okay. Yeah,
I
that's one
know.
that people might need to just get clear on because that could change over time. But what are you seeing in total? How has it benefited the patients from what you've seen? And
Yeah.
how has it benefited owners from your perspective that have implemented this?
Awesome. Yeah. So the benefits to patients that we're seeing, it kind of dovetails what a PT's interpretation of a benefit is for them. But honestly, the first one is it's improving the compliance of home exercise. The other cool thing, kind of to ducktail into the PT benefit realm, is follow through with plan of care. We're seeing
Mhm.
a lot less of the I've got to 6, 7 visits, I had to cancel, and now I'm a ghost kind of under the radar in your system patient. We've all seen those happen too frequently. So a benefit to both worlds is that accountability. They know I'm going to call them at some point. They know that they're being followed up on, and if there's been a couple missed visits, I can easily interject and just say, hey, you coming to your next visit, or a reminder of the next visit, however you want to say it,
Through the
so that
platforms that people are using.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
that plan of care is being followed through on. The couple things that I liked, and I have to admit some guilt, judging a book by its cover, right? Okay, how I tracked age of folks that were following through with at least 2 months of engagement, right? The average age that I found was 73.3, right? So that's the average age that I came up with, right? So, we've got our mid 80 folks and our 65-year-old folks both participating, both playing in the game,
Nice.
and being able to handle the technology, and honestly saying, Matt, after I got out over the fact that this was just one more thing to do, they'll always say that first. I've done PT before where maybe I do my exercises twice a week and I tell my PT I did them. This is helping me, man. This is helping me stay engaged more. Like, I've gotten that numerous times, and it's fun to hear that it's paying off in that way.
Mhm.
And
Stuff that's
then
good for the patient in that regard ends up being better for the PTs and the business owners. Supposedly their metrics are going to improve, huh?
yeah, correct, right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The plan of cares are being followed through on. We haven't quite been able to capture the are there less no shows, are there less cancellations because of this, just because you've got such a variety of insurers and payers coming through the door. The patients are enjoying it. They like the fact that they can ask these questions, and then so seeing that parallel between the patient benefit and the PT benefit, the patients can get those questions out of the way. The PT, when the patient walks into their clinic space, the PT doesn't have to spend the first 20 minutes teaching Susie Q how to stretch her calf again. Like it's happening. She's got this app that's showing her how to do it. She can ask questions. So the PT is finding it easier just to kind of hop on the progression. Okay, here's the next step. This is great. Keep doing this. But here's our next step. Rather than so much hand holding happening in the clinic, it's happening outside of the clinic space. So
Yeah.
PTs are enjoying that. One more PT benefit from a metric standpoint is we've got 4 clinic locations, and it's really cool because although it's clumped in Southern Oregon, there's different demographic types of people that are coming in, and the busyness that's involved in each clinic varies. So in our busy clinic, this has allowed less wait list time too. So if there's a
Hmm.
patient that is kind of like, you've been 3 times a week, then 2 times a week. Let's go to 1 time a week because I know you're going to have this follow up with Matt now. So meet me 1 time a week for the next 3 weeks. You're doing great with your exercises. I think your progression is going to continue to incline. Now with those couple cancels, it's not a loss. It's a get somebody in on the wait from the wait list
Mhm.
and engage them on the patient too. So we've been able
Mhm.
to kind of shorten our wait list time without interrupting somebody's full plan of care or decreasing their progression as they go along.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. What I was going to ask you is we talked about CMS implementing these codes. Have commercial payers taken these codes on as well, including workers' comp?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've learned some from folks that, well, let's just say the RTM is a vehicle. It's an alliteration that I like to give. Okay, I'm going to give you the keys to the car, and I'm going to teach you how to drive this car. Now, the car can go 120 miles an hour. You might get caught, you know. I'm going to kind of give you the preference where I like to drive somewhere right in that speed limit, maybe going a little bit if I'm in a rush and I need to find a restroom, but we're going to be driving in this speed limit that's a safe zone kind of thing. So I have talked to clinic owners that I will say are driving at 120 miles an hour, and they have tagged to find out what insurances are reimbursing, and some private insurances are joining on the boat. So I've engaged in that part with the clinics I'm working in. So we're still in the test phase to kind of see where they're at, where they're coming back with when we send these codes out, kind of thing. Of
It's
course,
going
we're
to vary
supporting it
state
with
to state. It's going to be really hard until everyone just starts doing it, and then you find out who the payers are and who aren't, right? And
yeah,
I mean, you could, if someone in Florida wanted to call all the commercial payers that they're contracted with and ask them if they're accepting RTM codes.
Good.
Who knows if they get the right answers? They might as well just start billing them. Huh?
You're right, and that's test it. You know, that's kind of where we still are a year after the release of these codes. And I've had that conversation with owners. We can test the waters, but we just got to try at some point. Like there are a lot of gray areas, yes, but there are things that we can work through. We can work around and figure out what's going to happen best. Yeah.
I gotcha. What are you seeing then in terms of training the physical therapy teams on this technology and implementing into their program? Because even before we pushed record here, you mentioned, physical therapists don't like to have their days messed with and their flow changed at all. And so implementing new programs can be difficult. What's been the experience implementing this application and the expectation that they're going to use it with their patients on a regular basis from the physical therapists themselves?
First and foremost, to make this work, you got to find a software and it's seamless without as much interruption. So hopefully you have some form of program that you're generating exercises on that you can share, right? So
they need to have a patient engagement app of some kind. I mean, most of the EMRs aren't going to come with this, I'm assuming, right? You correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not going to come with these. They need to have some kind of patient engagement app that is separate from their EMR, separate from their email contact list, because the newer apps that maintain engagement like this are going to start tracking the patient's engagement and exactly all this stuff. So they need to be considerate of what those apps look like, right?
Yeah, they do. I kind of lucked out in that realm. We had been using Physiotech for 8 years as our software generator, and that was integrated seamlessly through our EMR system.
Nice.
And so when I click the home exercise program there, Physiotech has it set up where the patient's profile is generated. It's just boom. There's no other clicks until I've just told my PTs, just make sure that you send this to Mrs. Jones. That's all you have to do. I got the rest. Physiotech's made it nice where it's sending them, and it's always been this way. They send them the profile link, the patient logs on, they're good to go. Now, if you've engaged in their RTM platform, those patients are easily filtered out with a dashboard that tracks days engaged, how many logins they've had, and where their musculoskeletal data is, and then an exportable report that just goes right into copy pasted into your EMR. Away we go. Here's those 16 visits, and here's why I'm billing this code, kind of stuff.
Nice.
So Physiotech's been great to work with in that sense, and our relationship has blossomed, and I'm kind of helping them figure out how to provide a solution to patient or to clinic owners so that they can get on board and have this startup program, and they're not, over their head with a million other tasks. Yeah, trying to do this stuff.
Right. So what should PT owners be aware of? They should give Physiotech a try, especially if it seemingly integrates into the EMR like yours. Which EMR
If
are you
they're already
using?
using it, yeah. So we use Clinician.
Okay, so if they're using clinicians, Physiotech easily integrates. But say they're using other engagement apps right now, or they're looking into them. What do they need to consider to make the RTM codes and that technology work in their best interest to make it as seamless as possible?
Yeah, you bet. Um, Top three things. One is a software that is going to, and I've pinned it on home exercises because that's what the patient's coming to. They don't want to be spammed out by emails and surveys and stuff to get that engagement. A software that you're using for your exercise that they can log into well, that tracks their engagement, their login times, has some form of, like I said, musculoskeletal, RPE, pain level, those kind of things that can
Okay.
be clicked on and reported by the patient. And then for you as a PT, you want to make sure that that data is gathered easily and exportable. Like I can just copy paste, kind of move it over to my
Nice.
documentation when it's time. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Those would be the biggies of what to look for in that software. You got to draw the patient in somehow, and they don't want to be spammed. So if they're going there to complete their exercises, that in my mind, if I put myself in the patient role, is less obtrusive to my life than having to answer surveys and pinpoint this and do that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Two questions related to documentation that you were talking about. You talked about RPEs, relative physical exertion scale, and pain levels. Is that absolutely necessary in order to utilize the RTM codes to have those two metrics?
Where we've ended up after a year of debating and where it's at, in the end, my answer would be yes, you want that musculoskeletal data so that you have some data points driven. You don't want just
Yeah.
zeros lined up and I just had 16 logins. But in the end, yes, my patient logged in 16 times. Well, what did they do those 16 times? So backing it up with what they did,
And how it
I
affected them.
feel, yeah.
I see. Yeah, I can understand that. Documentation for it. I'm assuming that you're not only documenting that you had the engagement, but this engagement and the utilization of these codes or this program or app has generated this kind of improvement in those same metrics that you measured, I'm assuming.
Nailed it. Yeah. That's almost what I write in my documentation. Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
yeah.
Just a few sentences. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Gotcha. Right. And where have you seen pushback from providers? Have there? I'm sure there's been some, but what are some of the quote unquote complaints? Where were they hesitant? What have you had to deal with in order to get this fully implemented?
As far as from the owners themselves, the first part is, is this worth my time? I want to see some numbers, right? So
Fully.
again, state to state differences of what is being reimbursed. How big is your population? If you're 75% cash pay with a couple insurers, I mean, it's not really for you to invest your
No,
time in this.
no.
What your bread and butter now should be is if you're in that 20 to 50% Medicare, Med Advantage population, like this should be for you because you should be sick and tired of getting cut 1,000 times a year. Death by 1,000 cuts kind of scenario. This would be for you. So the pushback is it worth it? And that's kind of my first answer. What's your patient population? Are you going to
Okay.
garnish what you're looking for out of this? So then if the answer is yes, okay, great. The next hurdle is where does the time come from to capture all four codes? You
Yeah.
know, and I answer that with, let's delve into your clinic space, your environment. What's going to work best? Do you have two or three PTs that you don't mind blocking off 2 45-minute segments in your day and then scheduling a couple 15-minute calls to try to get those 8 zeros? Great, go for it, because you're at least
Okay.
going to be contacting some folks and going through that realm. Or do you want to allocate one PT in some of their time and figure out how to make that work financially for
Mm,
you and them? Um, but man, you know what the number one difficulty is the
what?
individual PTs and that stinking piece of paper. That piece of paper. my exercises. Here's my exercises that
Oh,
I'm giving to you, patient.
they
Actually,
need the paper. They got to print it out. They
the
really,
PT's got to print it out. They got to print it out and give it to them. So that becomes an automatic excuse for the patient. I've got my
oh,
exercises right here. I don't need to mess around and clumsily try to log in. That change in behavior has honestly been one of the biggest difficulties
really,
for the success of these programs.
yeah,
Otherwise, once you get them rolling, the patients, they know how to log in. They know how to find their exercises, and they like, the extra help that comes with it. So it's
yeah,
an interesting thing. I don't know.
yeah.
It might be me talking to myself when I propose those scenarios, but that's what I portray in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it just reminds me of when I started physical therapy in 1999, man. We had those, I forget what the exercise box of cards, home exercise program cards was, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
have to pull out the cards and arrange them on the printer copier and then make a print off of your specialized home exercise program and print that off. And eventually we were smart enough to just
How
put
do
the
they get
same five or
anything
six
done?
exercises on a sheet and copy off 20 of them. But we always had that box of cards for home exercise programs. And
Oh, it's
it
so
sounds like a
true.
lot of therapists are still stuck from a couple decades ago.
It's evolved. It's evolved, but that printer becomes a friend somehow. I don't know if it's just a mental rest break to run down the hall and grab that piece of paper or whatnot, but
Maybe that's
that's just open honesty with you there to say what are some big hurdles that I found. Otherwise, there's workable solutions around how to implement in your clinic space. Absolutely.
I gotcha. And
Yeah.
I know this can change significantly between jurisdictions. It could change over the course of time. It could change between payers. What do you see some of the reimbursement rates for these codes? If you could
Sure.
put a range to
Yeah.
them.
A range to it. Yeah. Right. So that's that 98975. I train the patient. Right. The low end for Medicare, and this is purely Medicare. The low end is 14 and a half bucks, high end 19 and a half bucks.
Okay.
So right around that 14 to 19 range. The 98977, which can be billed every 30 days, with those 16 logins, that is ranging low end 42, high end 51.
Okay.
I'd say
Got
there's
it.
a nice spectrum there. The 98980 is right around that 33 to $35 for the low range, up towards 40.
Okay.
I kind of wish that one was higher because that's the time, that's
That's the
all of
one
my
that takes
time
time.
I'm coding for. Yeah.
Right.
And then following suit, the 81, the 98981 is low end 20, high end like $27. So that's
Okay.
that second chunk of
Second set of
$20
20
in my
minutes.
month. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
gotcha. And obviously, you have to have the 7.5 code before you can build the other ones. You can't like just jump in on 9.7, the 7.7 code.
Right.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
in my model, what I do is okay, that magic number 16 threshold has been reached. What I'll do is I'll just kind of bundle those two codes together and go.
Oh, okay.
Other
I see.
clinics on upon eval, other clinics feel comfortable throwing that code in with their eval code and their Therax or whatever, and
I
then
see.
throw that I trained them code in there. Yeah, and I've not seen a problem in terms of disagreement with that code coming back either way there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've seen Medicaid be on board with these as well. And maybe that's state dependent, but have you seen Medicaid payers paying on that as well?
It's interesting because a long time ago, the clinic that I've been working with has decided not to honor Medicaid
Okay.
in Oregon because it's just for years, right? There's a client that I'm working with on the other blue ocean in Delaware, and his practice is a fair amount of Medicaid, and they're actually reimbursing. They're on the high end for that 7.5 code. He's like, I've tested the waters, and it's right around that $19 range.
Nice.
So
Okay.
they're honoring it. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. Good.
Mhm.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
you've shared a bunch of stuff about what it basically is, what the codes are, how do you meet it, how some of the intricacies in terms of implementing it. Um, is this, and what I really like is you laid it out. The owners that should be using it are the ones that have higher percentages of these populations in their clinic and that are coming through.
Yeah.
You said the people that tend to use it the most are about 73 years of age. Does that mean those that are, teenager through 40, 50 years old aren't as interested in compliance with it, or the people that just use it most are the older group?
Right. So again, I started out with the clinic saying, can we keep our doors open to Medicare population?
Okay.
Right. So where I've laid most of my time is that 65 and up category. Now that we're starting to play with, see what the interest is with clients in the private sector, um, I'll be able to answer that probably in a couple months because we'll
Okay.
have some time. But it's an interesting thing. It's going to have to be
Gotcha.
a pretty sexy kind of thing for folks that have to pay a little bit more out of pocket to meet their deductible to kind of buy
Okay.
into.
Yeah, I see.
So I think the presentation is going to have to change. Yeah,
Okay. It just has
yeah,
to be a different selling point, obviously.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Well, anything that we didn't cover in this discussion today that you find yourself talking about when you're introducing this to owners and practitioners?
Covered a lot. I mean, you as being that PT background, and you just kind of went through the list of what I usually get from PT owners.
Yeah,
How is this doable? How does this look like? But I love your question where you asked, what should I look for when I'm approaching a doable software kind of thing, and hitting those ideas. And I would put one more caveat in there. Are they offering some kind of help, some kind of training for your staff, taking some of that
totally.
stuff off your plate? So
Don't
that's
leave it up
where,
to the
I,
owner to train the team on how to use this app. Please, please don't make us do that.
right. Yeah. Train the app. And then if they're like, Physiotech is taking advantage of our relationship and saying, hey, Matt, would you train these PTs on how to track their patients, on how to navigate, how to accurately bill? And so we're providing that kind of as a mended relationship at this point. And
That's
and
cool.
that's kind of where I started the own business to say, if you're a software company, I'm game. I'm game to try to learn your scenario and
Sure.
what you're using, and talk to your clients too. So um, it's a cool thing. It's a cool niche that has developed that people are interested about. On both ends,
Hmm.
the tech world and then the on the ground PT world. It's doable. And
Hmm.
if I had to sum one thing up, it's doable.
Right. Well,
Hmm.
I love the relationship that you have with Physiotech because you're able to say, this is what I'm needing. And they're saying, oh, we didn't know that. You're the boots on the ground guy. And hey, go and fix this, Physiotech. You do that, and then this can make it more seamless. And so it's really cool that you have that relationship with an engagement software already. And so you'll want to, those who are listening and have an engagement software already, they're going to want to talk to their vendors and make sure that they're laying out some of these things. Don't make me count the number of interactions every 30 days. Dude, flag me. Or if it's getting close 5 days beforehand and they've only gone in there 12 times, flag me. Let me know this. Give me some push notifications, right? Make it as simple to capture those codes as possible.
100%.
That's when your value comes in, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a huge race with a platform that you're probably already paying for out there. If you're a clinic owner, like, take the information that you learn and contact them and say, I'm already working with you. What do you got that's going to work for me? And
Right.
these software companies are going to, they're invested their time to come out with a solution that provides what you need through an RTM program. So they're
Mhm.
going to listen, and it's all being evolved at this point. So
Yeah.
Physiotech's just done an awesome job listening and working with it and continuing to build their program. So I'm just super happy that we found that our paths crossed the way they did.
Yeah.
And that's how I started with them. Hey, can you make this happen? Yeah. Wow, this is working for us, That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
It's cool that it seamlessly integrates with your EMR too. You can't, I mean, you
And
really can't
that's
beat that.
no,
Yeah.
no, it's there for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice. Well, if people wanted to get a hold of you, if they have some further questions, Matt, or maybe ask for some help with implementing into their practices, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So I haven't even gotten to the point of establishing a landing page for you to look at or anything like that. And just refreshed my LinkedIn profile. So if you just look up Matt Jurek on my LinkedIn profile, otherwise email me at Matt with two T's at Osprey RTM.com. And so eventually ospreyrtm.com will have a landing page that we can kind of share some information with you. Yeah.
Okay. And Osprey is OSPREY. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. OSPREYRTM.com. Got it.
Yes, sir.
And Jurek is, just so those who don't know, Jurek is Jurek, just like it sounds. So it should be really easy to find you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah. Thanks. Yep.
Awesome. And then for those people who are interested in physiotech and you want to look into that, I think it's physiotech.org.
Yes, sir.
PHYSIOTEC.org. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So people want to check out what they've got.
You'll if you schedule a phone meeting over there with the interest of RTM, you'll be put in touch with the CEO and me, probably your first meeting. So you get the bones, because we want to make it successful for you, Yeah.
For sure. Awesome, man. Make sure you let them know that I sent you. It'd be great to have people go your way so you can find out exactly how to implement this and get it on the right track initially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today, Matt. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you bet. You're fun to work with. And like I said, I told you privately, your podcast is filling another niche that is awesome, as I get to know clinic owners and their minds, and listening to what you have presented is really cool. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one.